New businesses from around the globe are redefining the internet with the potential to take over. The current wave of online entrepreneurs are captivating the digital generation. Join me, Dan Brown, as I dig deeper into the internet's business scene and spend time with the voices behind the movement. This is Digital Business Billionaire. And hey, listen, if you want show transcripts and show notes for each episode emailed to you so you have everything available to you, you can go over to dbbshow.com right now and sign up to get those. So every time there's a new episode, we'll also email you the transcripts so you can read through them and the show notes with any resources or links we mention in the show in case you want to check that stuff out. And all you have to do is go over to dbbshow.com and sign up, and you'll get those delivered right to your email inbox. Hey, it's your buddy Dan Brown here. Welcome to another episode, and today I'm fortunate enough to be joined by Bond Halbert, and as some of you may know, Bond's father, Gary Halbert, was the greatest copywriter that ever lived. So while most kids were, going to baseball games and play dates, Bond tagged along with his dad to seminars and to all kinds of high-level meetings. And since then, Bond, his father, and his brother have went on to sell millions of dollars in products, and recently Bond and his brother Kevin run the Gary Halbert Letter, of which I'm subscribed to and would recommend anyone else listening to this call to do the same. And they run a mastermind as well as do copy critiques and consultations. So I'm super excited today to welcome Bond to the call, and just wanted to know, did I leave anything out in that intro, Bond?
No, it was better than I could hope for.
Awesome. So let's not waste any time. Let's get right into the content here. To start things off, I'm just wondering, how did you get into direct response marketing aside from the obvious of, your dad teaching it to you? Like, what's the story behind this all?
Okay. Well, one, as you mentioned, it's basically a family business, but the whole family business started the day I was born, because the day I was born, my dad got fired from his last regular job that he held. And right after that, he started working on a promotion, which eventually became the most widely mailed sales letter in history. I don't know if it still holds that distinction, but it held it for a long time. And then that was a sales letter, and then he started branching out and doing print ads, and after a few successes, everybody started beating a path to his door to teach him. And so I grew up not only, like you say, going to seminars and high-level mastermind meetings instead of ball games, and that's all we talked about. But beyond that, I was also actually watching him teach a lot of people who are now today's marketing and copywriting gurus as well. So, the one thing that I was really there and instrumental, I would say instrumental, but I was there and heavily involved in paying a lot of rapt attention to when he was teaching everybody. So I actually, learned how to teach really well, which later turned out to be a benefit for me. But and I promise not to abuse this story too much on my blog, because I know I don't want to sound like a broken record with people explaining it. So if you want the nitty-gritty details, you can go check it out over at blondhalbert.com. It's not a pitch or anything. It's just that I don't want to belabor the story too much. But when I was about 9, I was talking to my dad, and I told him how fortunate I was that I was. This is one of his down points, and I said, I get to see how you do all this stuff and follow along. And he just thought that was a fantastically smart thing for a kid to say. And so from that point on, he started to seriously mentor me like he would anybody else. That was paying him a lot of money to learn copy, except it went on a lot longer, of course. And, I ended up, having a really in-depth knowledge of the business. My first job working for anything was for any company was a list brokerage company. My father, I ended up going into business with my father and then on my own, making a lot of money, and then stayed in direct response even after that venture because ended up putting together big deals for some of the big houses, marketing houses out there. And then when my father passed away, Kevin and I ended up answering a lot of questions for people, and so we sort of fell into teaching people how to write copy, because like I said, we knew the lessons better than anybody. Not only was I usually the first student to ever hear them, but I heard them multiple times. I watched them evolve, and eventually started making adjustments and adding things of my own, and kind of building upon that. So, ended up falling into the more teaching and consulting section of the business. But basically, I just grew up in it, and there was, and it's kind of hard to go around and tell people, look, I've been in this business since I was 9 years old. They don't really get it. I was actually stuffing and stamping and sealing envelopes for test mailings way before that, And so, thankfully there's a book out there where my dad was writing letters, explaining this to me as a young man, and that ended up being actually proof of a really incredible education that, very few people would ever suspect was valuable. Because, you tell somebody your dad's a doctor, they don't expect you to know how to, do sutures. But they don't understand the difference between, hey, I want to spend my whole life teaching marketing, and I'm going to, teach it run everything through my kid first and stuff like that. So it's really an in-depth education that I got from that. I did go on and get a degree in marketing, a 5-year marketing degree from the university. It's just, I don't really highlight that very much because I don't think it means nearly as much as the education I got the way I grew up.
Right. I mean, I'm not quite sure that many people or, even anyone can say that they've been learning the stuff and teaching it since they were 9 years old, right?
I actually went around, I was actually used to search and see, like I'd meet, and find out like Jay Abraham's got kids and say, hey, are any of your kids, into marketing? Because I'm going to run across somebody who can relate to it the way that I do. And the closest I have is my brother. And Kevin, he's a very sharp guy, knows, a ton about marketing and everything. It's just that one statement I made to my dad made him kind of like anoint and, pull me out. I mean, I was literally traveling around the world going to business meetings in the Cayman Islands and, I remember being pulled out of school to go to business meetings, to go to brainstorming sessions. My dad one time told me, you can learn whatever you're going to learn today, tomorrow, but I'm going to take you and show you where the magic happens, which nobody gets to learn. And that was a meeting with Eric Weinstein, who was a top list broker, and Jay Abraham. And I also, we flew back and stayed with and, worked with Ben Suarez. And, and it was just such an in-depth, take me everywhere, And I was part of these meetings. It wasn't just, you're there listening. It was very quickly that I became a participating member.
Very cool. I'm sure we can take a lot of, information from your experiences here, and hopefully we can transition into more specifically how to sell information using an online medium, which is actually what my next question is about, because you're someone who's been doing ad copy in the offline realm. Like I remember you mentioned ads and an actual sales letter, but how does direct response copy, differ in offline mediums versus online mediums, and does it at all, or what's your take on that?
The power behind it doesn't change. The key emotions and understanding the consumer and the language you use, none of that really changes. So if you are studying copywriting, it's going to be good whether you're studying it for print, space ads, direct mail pieces, or video scripts, or online. But online, the attention span is slightly shorter than it is for in print. People naturally read less and less every generation. It's just the way that it's going. People used to pick up big, long, lengthy books to read for fun. And, right. The younger generations don't do it as much. And being online makes it shorter even for older generations. Nobody really wants to read a 300-page novel online. And so there is a little bit what I call a shorter attention span that what you're dealing with online, and so things have to be a little bit more peppy, but that really comes down to editing out anything that's not super exciting. So it doesn't change that much. There is a couple of things that make a big difference to a copywriter being online, which is, one, your ability to highlight is changed because, it used to be if you wanted to run something and it had a red letter word, that was going to cost you quite a bit in print. Okay, but now you got multiple colors. You can do sparkles. You can do move. You can make things move on the page to get attention. There's sound, but video is really kind of the biggest change because when you're crafting the letter and you're emphasizing things with subheads and you're making it sound sort of conversational, but it has a more formal feel because it's printed. That all kind of changes subtly. What you say doesn't really change. Your message, the way that you communicate it doesn't change that much. But when you're doing it online and you're writing something for a script, there's a subtle nuance change that you have to be aware of. Just the same way that when you're doing print, in a space ad, you can't say, well, I've attached a dollar bill to the top of this thing, because you didn't do that. It's a newspaper ad. But in any case, what I'm saying is there's just this subtle conversational change, which actually is kind of cool because you don't have to worry as much about the formalities of the printed English. You're always kind of paying attention to, you're conscious of when you're avoiding, when you're breaking grammar rules in print, right? You don't have to worry about that, at all in video. And, you still don't want to say, make a complete grammatical faux pas like how much gas, how much gallons or something like that. That that wouldn't make sense if somebody was speaking it. But you don't have to worry about being perfect about where your commas are and all of this other stuff. It's more conversational, and I like it actually. But video scripting is probably the biggest change that online has brought to the copywriter himself.
And that makes sense. I'm actually a big advocate for sales video, or VSLs as we know them in the internet marketing community, just because of some of the things you just mentioned, like the ability to not have to spell check everything, and it's more conversational. It comes off more natural. But aside from that, I'm just wondering really quick if I could challenge you just to answer this in one or two sentences. I'm just wondering what you prefer more in terms of an online sales letter, in terms, like, what's your opinion on long form versus short form? Do you prefer one over the other?
Well, this is an age-old question, and the answer is no. The answer is you do your research, you come out with the things that you want to say, and you can never be too long. You can only be too boring. Now,
right. Being
boring is, of course, easier online than it is in print. Like I said, the attention span is a little bit shorter. But you want to say all the things that you have to say. And the way that you solve that online is the way that it is seen. So, for example, what you will do is, let's suppose that you have a very long piece and you're going through 7 very detailed sections or detailed arguments of why they should buy. What you want to do online is you really segment those out and say, and leave them. You can leave them in a way where they can click here to read more if they're really interested in that section. So basically, when they're looking at it, they look at the copy and they don't necessarily see it as a 15-page sales letter that they decide not to read because it's online and it's really long. But so the way that you can handle formatting online, it makes it so that it's easier to make the decision to start picking the parts of the copy that are of interest to you as a prospect, as a potential consumer, okay? But I really don't think that you want to turn around with the attitude of, I want this to be a 1-page or a 2-page, or I want this to be like a 15-page lengthwise piece of copy. It is much better for you to say, I want to put in all the points that are super relevant in the order in which they're relevant to the prospect, okay? Like, for example, I mentioned that I do have a degree in marketing. That's not of any use to you whatsoever until you're thinking about, does he understand corporate environment, right? So as long as the points are addressed at the right point in time, for the process the prospect is going through. And as long as you've mentioned all the points that might be of interest to them and then hacked out every single bit of the copy that would not be exciting or interesting, and kept it exciting and alive, it really is not going to matter that much about whether it's long or short, so I won't focus. Now, of course, the answer to everything in marketing, is testing,
Right.
So, I've taken pieces that are quite long and chopped them and shortened them by applying that so what test, why does the prospect care about this, and just erasing stuff and improve things 400%. But the copy that I wrote that was competing with that copy was actually also very long. It was just that it was, it just didn't get boring. So you want to write that way and then test out, the shorter versus the longer stuff. And it's kind of like, whether you like video sales letters or not, the reason that you should love them is they perform better. They just do. If you take basically the same information, the same concept and everything, and you present it in a video format online versus an online letter format, they usually tend to do better. Now, I don't believe in absolutes in marketing, so you will hear me say words like usually and tend to, but VSLs tend to outpull straight letters.
Very cool. Yeah, I think one of the most important takeaways from what you just said is, there's no absolutes in marketing. You have to test everything. So testing long versus short, is that one of the first things that you tend to do when you're testing out an offer?
It comes out to being testing, you end up testing out that, but it's not the first thing. The first things that you're testing out is actually the offer.
Right. And we'll get into more on that if I could just stop you there later on in the interview, because for now, let's just refer to sales letter, sales video, just as like a general type idea, because the next few questions you can apply to both of them. So I'm just wondering, what's the most important component to a sales letter or a sales video? And by now, I'm sure most of our users are thinking the offer, but what is the offer and how can you improve it?
Well, okay, the most important part of your sales process, it doesn't make a difference whether it's a video or not, is your research. This is where all the power in your marketing comes from. People think it comes from fancy words or a lot of experience in writing, and it's not. The example I love to use for this is the Domino's pizza campaign. When they came out with get your pizza in 30 minutes or less or it's free, it was an incredible offer that made them really stand out. And the reason that was great is because they did research and somebody went around and said, what people are really sick of is not being able to, rely on when the pizza comes. Because back then you would order a pizza and it could come in 15 minutes or an hour and a half. And it's hard to plan your work day or anything around that kind of window. And so that was something people really wanted. And it can't, so they created that offer out of understanding the customer, right? And so when it came down to writing it, I could have written, get your pie in under 30 minutes or it's free, half an hour or it's on us. The words weren't really as important as the offer was, right? And so the offer is actually the offer should be coming out of the research and understanding the consumer and what that consumer really desires. And once you have that, then, the copy isn't nearly as important. Now, the copy is always important because, when you can make a difference of 10, 20, 100% difference in sales based on the words you choose, it's fantastic. But if you don't have a good offer, you don't have a good business to start that whole process with. And a really good offer can overcome really bad copy simply because if it's that great and that fantastic, the first few people who actually do buy will spread it via word of mouth. You should go check these guys out. They've got a fantastic offer. There's a place I go buy tires at. I've never seen them advertised everywhere, but their whole business is spread via word of mouth because they offer the best deal. And so research is where you're really going to get the power in all your marketing. There's 3 phases to marketing or copywriting, in my opinion, which is the first one is research. Understanding your product, the market, the buyer most of all. Then the middle phase is, putting all these thoughts down and developing the strategy and the plan and all that. And the final third is really all the editing, and that's where the professionalism comes in. That's where hey, if we don't deliver your pizza in 30 minutes, we'll foot the bill and we'll pay for it. And then abbreviating that down to 30 minutes or it's free, that's professionalism. The power was still in the research. It was still in the offer and still in understanding the market. So, the number one thing you can do in all of your marketing efforts that I see people not doing nearly enough of is the research.
Very cool. So, touching more on that, going a little bit more in depth on the offer, when you want to tweak your offer, when you're testing out the actual offer itself, how do you go about stacking the value of the offer or the perceived value of it?
Well, there's lots of ways to stack the values. I mean, you can do a lot of stuff for branding purposes. You can add in social clout and bonuses and all that other stuff. So I can, and I could go on forever with it. I'll give you the one that I think is the most overlooked. And I think it is telling stories that explain the value of things. When somebody tells you that, here's a Rolex watch and it's worth, let's say, they charge $5,000 for it. And you tell people, well, it tells time, it's got a black dial, it's got rings. That's all fine, but it doesn't really provide nearly as much value as when you explain the history of Rolex, and then you explain to them that, look, this comes from the finest sources of steel ever known to man, and then, only the best and most impure, metal rods are used, and then those are shipped to Switzerland, and in Switzerland there's a proprietary process that's been handled by the family that owns the company for hundreds of years, and there's 1,500 man hours that are put into the making of this watch, and it's they hand guilloche these things, and when you start doing that, you build a lot of value, and you build the perceived value of it. Now you can stack the offer with bonuses, and there's all kinds of other stuff that you can do. But I think if you learn how to become a good storyteller in the way that it relates to the prospect, to what the prospect cares about, it helps to build that value. Because a lot of times what you're doing in marketing is you're actually giving the consumer the excuse to buy certain things. So, for example, when they do that with a Rolex watch, what they're doing is giving you the excuses so that you can tell your coworkers and your friends and your spouse why you spent all this money on a watch that holds time no better than a $40 watch, and so that's the reason that they can charge so much for it. And so I think a lot of the things that people don't one of the most overlooked ways of building value is to actually tell stories that translate that value.
Very cool. I've actually never heard someone articulate that. I mean, I've seen it being used, but, normally people will just tell you, add on a bonus or, add on maybe an advertised bonus or whatever it may be, all the typical, value stacking things that you see all over the Warrior Forum and stuff. But I really like that, and I think that's a great little insight to creating your sales material. But it just draws up one question in my mind, is just when you are going to articulate the story behind, your offer or the value of your offer, would you put that in before you even reveal the price, or would that be something that you're going to address after that as sort of a bonus?
I would do it before the price. We did an example of it sort of in this, and it was by accident. We didn't do it on purpose. You started talking to me about my history and my background, okay? Now, if you just knew I was some guy with a kind of a cool name, and and there's a lot of places that you can learn stuff that I'm going to teach you, because some stuff is new, like headlines need curiosity and benefits, right? So the question is, why would you pay more to learn from me? Well, telling you the story of how I got to the knowledge that I do, you understand that, look, this is going to save you a lot of money searching for the right answer, because I know, right? And you know it because of the story we mentioned before. And as long as the story is of interest to the person who is the prospect. I didn't tell you the story about becoming a dive master. I didn't tell you the stories about what I do with bicycling, or that I'm a watch collector, or any of that other stuff, because it's not relevant to you. But to you and to your audience, it is relevant to know that, my background and, what it was like, that I was Gary Halbert's, road dog for 30 years. These are the things that help build the value of the same information that you could probably go get from the Warrior Forum for free. But what you're going to have to do is sift through all the information that's over there to try and figure out, who's really knows and who's really understanding. And so, what happens is the more you tell that story and the more you do it, the less of a shock that sticker price is.
Right.
When you find out all of that stuff that went into the Rolex, now you're not like, okay, no, wait, are you kidding me? A $5,000 watch, I'm putting this down now. You turn around, what you turn around and go is, oh man, that's a lot of money. I'm gonna get one, or I wish I could afford one. But basically, you want to do the value stacking and the storytelling before you list, before you mention the price. It's actually even before you make the offer.
Right. So, like, if I was, reading, let's say there's a sales letter for a Rolex, and I'm thinking, man, how much is this thing going to cost me? And then, they tell me about the handcrafted family nature of the business, the steel, the quality of it, and everything. And then when the price comes out, I can justify that because of everything I know about what goes into the product and stuff like that, right?
Exactly. And that is, by the way, a big underutilized key or understanding of marketing that people don't get. Look, people buy a Rolex really for one reason. They buy it because they want a watch that impresses other people. They want everybody else to know they spent a lot of money on a watch. It's a status symbol of a sort. And Rolex outsells all of the other big high-end watches as far as number of pieces, but there are plenty of even far more expensive watches. But when people, the reason Rolex is so popular is when somebody goes out and buys their first $5,000, $10,000 watch, they really want other people to know it, but they don't want to admit that to themselves. They won't even tell themselves. They won't even tell themselves that in their head. What they will do is take those justifications you just gave them for their own stuff, for their own psyche, and they'll also pass it on to other people. This is why I got it. This is what makes it worth so much. Now, and there are a lot of times where people are buying and doing stuff, and their main motivation, they won't even admit it to themselves. And one of the keys of being a good marketer is accepting the truth for what it really is, not really being judgmental on it, and using it. So you wouldn't go out and say, buy this Rolex, and then people will know that you've got a really expensive watch. They'll say things like it's a symbol that lets you know you've arrived. But even more importantly, they won't even tell you that. They'll show pictures and tell stories demonstrating that without explicitly saying it. So, for example, like you see casino commercials, right? And there's, and you think the main point people go there is to win big. Well, there's a reason the guy sitting at the table in the casino commercial is surrounded by really hot women that are really wanted attention, and everybody's laughing. It's becoming the center of the action, center of the party, because in their fantasies, in their mind, when they're sitting at the table, they're James Bond. And you can't explicitly say, come out and pretend to be James Bond for a night. But you can show that in images. Anyway, I know I'm sidetracking, but that is a very valuable lesson, is to understand what really motivates people to buy and understand why you give them the excuses to spend the money that you're asking them to spend.
Cool. So that kind of leads perfectly into my next question, actually, because we're talking about premium prices and about testing the offer. So I'm wondering, in your opinion, what would you say are the most crucial components needed to charge premium prices for information specifically?
Well, again, there's a lot of, okay. It's going to be. I'm going to give you multiple answers because this is one of those questions where I could give you a week-long course on it.
Right.
But the first thing that you can do is specialize and niche more. That's worth more money to people. So, like, for example, let's suppose you're selling a physical product like grass seed. You can sell Southern California grass seed mix that's specific to Southern California's climate and terrain and so forth. That may not actually be different from grass mix in Florida. But with good research, maybe you'll find that there is. And so when you do that, it's the same thing with info products. Marketing for plumbers, you can sell to plumbers a lot more than you can sell, how to do online marketing, even though you're targeting plumbers. By actually saying this is direct marketing for plumbers, or this is, these are services specifically for this small, this particular group of people, it helps to stack the value. It also becomes your USP and becomes something unique that you can talk about. So that's one thing that you can do with info products or any product, by the way. It's not just related to that. Again, it's the ability to explain the benefits out of it. So I could sit there and talk to you, and in the promotion, and there's a product that I have out there that what it does is it teaches people a quick trick to writing great subject lines. Okay, and one of the first guys that I handed it to had a 30,000 name list, and he tried the trick, and it turned out that he went from a 9 to a 30% open rate just by doing the trick that I taught. So what I did with the copy for that is I explained to them, I said, listen, this is, and it's, by the way, it's an info product, obviously. And what I explained to people is I said, look, here, if I can increase your open rates and, teach you something that will increase the number of people who open your email by 1%, but for the rest of your life, from now on, from when you're constantly opening emails, how much would that be worth to you? Okay, it's got to be worth more than the $17 or $30 that, we're selling this product for. And, imagine if it works as well as it does with these other people where it's improving their email rates as much as 300%. Okay, if you think about it this way, you almost can't afford not to buy the product. Okay, that ability to translate the benefits into value and into money helps me charge a premium price for it. But of course, there's all the other stuff, like I said, that can go into it. Branding, you know that this is Gary Halbert's kid, who's teaching you this. I have a reputation for being able to pull this off. Actually, I have a great reputation for writing fantastic subject lines and getting really high open rates. And that's, that was verified to me by A. Weber and a whole bunch of other people by doing comparisons. So branding, there's a whole bunch of other stuff I could teach. But the number one thing I would say that you need to do is start learning how to translate value and features and benefits into, value and financial value for the prospects alone. So, again, if I'm charging $17 or $27 to teach you how to increase open rates, how much do I have to increase that for it to be worth it for you? And when you can explain that to people, then, they're nodding their heads mentally as they're reading your pitch and, reading your explanation for why it's got that value, and it's easier to charge a higher price for it. It's so, and it's also, stories, branding, social clout, bonuses, all of that other stuff, all comes into play. But I think for this one, I think the answer I'm going to, leave everybody with is translating benefits to value. And I'll give you a quick example of that. Most everybody knows the features of their product, right? Okay, so let's suppose the feature of this ball chucking device, those long things that you stick a tennis ball in, you flip your wrist and it throws the ball 100 yards for your dog to run after?
Yep.
Okay, let's suppose that I'm selling one of those, and one of the features is the fact that it's made out of a high-grade polyethylene plastic, so it's not likely to break and get worn out. So, okay, that's a feature. Now, the feature is that it's a high-grade plastic. The benefit is that it won't break. The financial benefit is instead of having to buy 5 or 6 over the next few years, you're only going to be able to, you only have to buy this one. So it's definitely worth the extra $5 you're charging over what the competition has. Do you see that? Because I went from a feature to a benefit to what it really means to, to a financial explanation that makes sense as to why you would pay more for it than you would for another ball chucker.
Right. So I've heard the feature versus benefits thing about sales material so often, but now I'm wondering, would you include the feature, the benefit, and the financial benefit if you were writing a sales letter for, let's say, that dog chucking device?
Absolutely, and I would also include the emotional benefit too. So the benefit that I would include is, this will save you, from having to buy 4, ball chucking devices to get the same, the same number of throws or whatever it is. I'd have to reword it. But this is, so it's not only saving you that money, but it's also saving you the time, the hassle, and the aggravation of having to go get one, and Fido not being able to get his daily run in between, because it breaks, and then, disappoints the dog, disappoints you, you go home, then you have to wait for the pet store to open again the next day and go either return it or go get a new one. So I would explain the benefits and the emotional benefit of things and say, get back to the point where, your dog's getting that healthy run. And so you're not, you don't sit around with the dog giving you those eyes and making you feel guilty. Okay, so I would give them, if you want to give the financial benefit or the emotional benefit added on top of those features as well. In fact, that's how you should design your bullets. The bullets should be designed to, talk about a feature real quick and then the benefit, and, either the financial benefit or the emotional and or both.
That makes sense, and I'm definitely going to start implementing that, because I never really thought about the difference between just a raw benefit and then actually taking out of that the financial or emotional benefit, and then coupling it together and providing your product as a solution to the original problem that you would have introduced to that.
Yeah, and the way you're describing it is it's bringing out the outcome that you desire, which is to not feel guilty about your dog not getting enough exercise because you're tired when you come home from work. So you can tie up when you can tie all of that stuff back around and in. The key to doing that, by the way, is to constantly, remember that old annoying game that all the kids play, which is why? Why? And every question, they start asking a basic question and then just say why, no matter what you answer.
Yeah.
You actually want to do that stupid game, except you want to do it with your own marketing research and ask why. So, for example, going back to the ball chucking example, why is it important that it not break? Well, it saves you money from buying these other things. Okay. Beyond that, why is it important? Well, it's important because it saves you time, and the hassle. Well, why is saving you the time and the hassle important? Well, it's because, in the meantime, the dog's not getting its exercise. Why is the dog's exercise important? Because the dog needs it to be healthy, and why do you care about the dog being healthy? Because I love the dog, right? So the thing is, you're tying it back to the safety, the benefit and security of giving your loving pet the exercise that it needs and enjoys, so it's living not just a healthier, longer life, but a greater life. And, but anyway, the thing is, you come up to you get all of that stuff extracted by the constant, this is part of research. This is what I teach as part of the research that people need to do. Constantly delving deeper and deeper and questioning and going why, getting down to the core, getting all the way back down to the core benefits, because the core benefits of a dog is actually, you can go really far here, because, if your dog lives longer and you have a good relationship, you live longer. You know that, right? People who have pets live longer than people who don't. You can, so the thing is, the more you are willing to irritate yourself and your clients by delving into these why questions and getting into it, you can pull out and extract all kinds of fascinating nuggets that other marketers are just going to miss.
Awesome. That's awesome. And if you'll allow me for a second, I know we could talk about this all day. I'd love to pick up your brain about this all day, but I want to go into, while we still have time, something else that I'm sure you could talk about all day, and it's about positioning and differentiation from your competition. And I'm wondering what elements, or I guess tactics, can one use to position a business, your information business, as being unique in the customer's mind when they think about your business as opposed to the competition?
Okay. Again, you could do a lot of the stuff I mentioned before, branding and going for a niche, say, I'm not just a copywriter, I'm a copywriter that specializes in teaching people to write VSLs or something like that. So all of that's still going to apply, but I like to give, I'm not like most people, I like to give one concrete, specific answer that people can use right away.
Perfect. That's what I'm looking for.
Well, then I'm your man, because, I don't like a lot of people give interviews and they give everybody the what, but not the how. Okay,
Right.
I'll give you one trick which I think is a fascinating one. One of the things that you should be doing in your as research and as part of your ongoing education is you should be collecting up offers. You should have a special file that that lists all the different kinds of offers you've heard. Price match guaranteed, guarantees double your money back, and so forth and so on. And you'll find unique offers in every kind of industry and business, and start collecting them and monitoring and recording them from everywhere that you find them. And whenever you hear something that's unique or different, you haven't heard that before. And then what you can do is you can apply those offers. This is just a quick cheat. You can apply one of the unique offers that's not seen in your business to your business, and that'll make your business unique. So using our Domino's Pizza campaign, I could say, I'm a copywriter. I'll get you'll have your copy in under 2 weeks or it's free. So I've taken their offer, right, and I brought it into this industry, which you never hear. Nobody ever hears get your copy in this certain amount of time or it's free. You could do the same thing, with you can do that trick with almost any industry, any product, or any offer just by going and looking at that list of offers that you should be compiling up and translating one that works really well in a different industry to your industry that is not seen.
So is that that's the same thing as differentiating your sales process? Is that correct, or is that something different?
Yeah, no, well, it all mixes up. So, for example, like branding and telling stories and all that helps you charge premium prices. It also is what makes you different. That story about explaining how I learned copywriting brands and makes me a lot different from the people who studied copywriting by a book or in an image advertising agency. Okay, niching does the same thing as well. But this is one of those ways that makes you stand out from your competition a lot more, because when you take an offer that's not heard outside of your industry and you apply it to your own industry, it makes you stand out a lot more. Now, everybody is unique and everything is unique, okay? And everything is also at the same time sort of similar and not really much different. So, for example, I'm a copywriter, so I can write copy for multiple industries, and other copywriters are going to teach you the same things about headlines and transitions and bullet points and a lot of that other stuff. But what I can, and so, even though my story and how I developed it is different and so forth, everything looks so similar to what my competition says. Because there are other people, and he's got a fascinating story how he got into writing copy and direct response, and he's got a lot of this other stuff. What is so strong about standing out versus you versus the other guy is the difference of saying, look, I'm applying and making these specialized offers that you don't see anywhere else, and so they become that itself makes you stand out a lot amongst the competition. So again, the Domino's Pizza, adopting that offer to copywriting, I've actually never seen that before. And you'd think that there was somebody out there already saying, and I'm sure there probably is, I just haven't heard of, but you would think that there's somebody out there saying, I'll get your copy done in under a week or it's free, right? I haven't heard it. But that is actually, that really stands out to the guy who's, wants to run an ad, and he's hired a few copywriters before, because timing of getting that copy is actually something they think about. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, that's great. I was just, my mind's running here. I'm just thinking about, all the different offers I've seen and how I could apply it to my own business. And I hope the people listening to this call are doing the same, because I think differentiation is a really important part of selling information, because, the competition is so stiff. There's so much competition out there. So in order to charge higher prices and differentiate yourself and separate your brand in the minds of customers, it's really important to, follow this process that you just mapped out for us.
Yeah.
Now, while we still have a little bit of time here, I'm wondering, Bon, do you have any last words for our listeners people who are wanting to learn how to sell effectively using videos, using online videos as a sales medium?
I will give you a ton of advice on that. And I'll give it to you for a few reasons. One is I don't teach people that, so I have no problem. I have no problem sharing everything I know. And of course, we don't have time for me to share it all. But here's there's a lot of things about video input that I'm going to give you, and I'm going to avoid a lot of stuff that you can get just for free, which is like, sound is most important, those types of things that you can go to all those other sources you mentioned. And let's talk about what I think is the most important. First, I want to say it's a process of learning. So you should, hop on blogs and study the guys who really know and promote talking about understanding videos and stuff like that. I'm not the guru to listen to them. But here's a couple of techniques that I will tell you. First, study the videos that you know work. And the way that you know that they work is people are paying good money to have them aired. So Facebook sales videos where people are paying that, and especially the ones that you see over and over again, because those are the ones you know that are working. Okay? And we used to do this with print ads. You could identify what was a good working print ad because you'd see it showing up every month, right?
Yep.
People weren't going to spend the money if it wasn't working. And then what you should do, and this is going to sound very basic and everything, but it really is going to help. You should then transcribe and write out the script from that video, so you know what it feels like to actually write out a good video sales letter script. The same way that what this does is a lot of people will debate whether or not this trick is helpful, but I've got with all the years of experience I have, I know it's helpful. So when you write out sales copy, whether it's a video sales letter, or a printed sales letter or an ad, what you're doing is you're not used to first of all, most people aren't used to writing. So they don't know what it feels like to write words like amazing and, to speak like a salesman and get the rhythm down. So you can actually teach yourself what it's like. It's like muscle memory if you write these things out. So my dad often taught a lot of his students to write out winning ads. And writing out a winning ad didn't guarantee you're going to be a great copywriter. But every one of his students that went on to become great did that exercise. Every single one. Okay? And the same thing is going to apply to VSLs, because the truth is when you're writing out a VSL, you're not like, it's unfamiliar to write the opening of a video. It's unfamiliar to write the ending. So that'll give you a basic feel and an understanding of what it's like to write a good VSL. So that's the first tip I'm going to give you is to find winning videos that actually do work, break them down, start studying them, but also physically write out those scripts and get used to doing it. The other thing is I'm going to say speak one-on-one. A lot of people, they get into front of a camera and they're like, hello, everybody out there in TV land. Don't do that. You're speaking to one person. That camera is, put a little mustache on that camera and a little name tag that says Dave. So that you're talking to one person, okay? That communication is, the best sales communication is still a personal one-on-one communication. Okay, you're not actually calling them out by name, but speak to make it an individual one-on-one conversation. Don't change that. Avoid still shots. One of the things that I recommend, and this is another tip, is go one step further than where everybody else is going with their videos. So when everybody was worrying about they got quality sound, you should have quality sound and then start putting in titles. When they had quality sound and titles, then you should start putting in intro and exit music. When they did that, and everybody's doing that, now maybe you want to run some credits at the end because that helps, the branding and the seriousness of the level of the show. All that stuff. Which also leads me to, but one of the things that you'll see if you watch television, because there's one thing we do great in this country, and that's, create mind-numbing TV. And what you'll notice about them, the difference between, have you ever watched C-SPAN?
I have not. I can't say I have.
Well, nobody really has watched C-SPAN because it's the most boring thing you could do. They no matter what they're talking about, they could be filming a porno and you'd still be bored because it's one stagnant camera. That's all it is, right? One stagnant camera. And so people have learned different tricks within editing so that they zoom in real quick and then they zoom out and they make it so it's less boring and stagnant with the video editing. Well, just stitching together another camera angle in there. And, if you sat there and timed it with a stopwatch, you'll notice in commercials on television that they rarely allow more than like 3 or 4 seconds before there's a camera change or an angle change, even if they're filming the same scene and you're looking at the same conversation and listening to the same script. So, you want to pay attention to that, because what they're doing is showing you that, hey, look, this, otherwise it bores the heck out of the audience. And when the action's going, all that movement is speeded up. So if you look at an action clip in a movie, it'll be less than a second before they change every scene. Flash to the guy in the car, flash to the guy who's in the chasing him, flash to the traffic scene, they flash back and forth a lot faster too. But a real quick way to bore the heck out of everybody is one single tripod camera to one person just sitting there talking, okay? So try and avoid that if you can. Sometimes you can do it with editing. I would use lots of titles and bullet points, because, this is I want to call it the O'Reilly trick, because he has this show where he puts up talking points. And because they're written in bullet point form, they appear more like facts. And so people take them more like facts, even though they're still just an opinion, right? And but using those kind of ding, and when he says it and ding and another bullet comes up and all that, does help in the video sales letters to sell more, because people, the great thing about a video sales letter is when you're using titles and adding them is the titles become print. Well, he said that. People feel that if you wrote something on a web page, in print, in a newsletter, anywhere, it becomes like, no, this is your word. You promised. Here it is written in print. But the video brings that extra element of, look, I get to know him. I can hear his voice. I can tell his nature. I can tell from his tone. I can see that he's a good guy. I can see that he's smarmy. Whatever it is, they give the feeling that they know the person by being able to see and hear and experience them. But the printed thing helps add that, this is a fact. So when you put out your features and your benefits and your promises and you're putting them up and using them in titles and in bullet point forms, it brings it home. The other thing is, and I would study guys like James Schramko, who's very good at stuff like that. But, in one of the things I noticed that he does is he indexes his videos, like when he does blog posts. He indexes them so that people can, if you're not interested in what he's talking about at the beginning, you can go right to 1 minute and 2 seconds, and you're going to get to the thing that you are interested in. So, that's something to think about, is indexing what's in the video by time. Because, they talk about videos not being watched if they're over 7 minutes. That's not really true. What is true is people look at how long the video is and then decide not to watch it because you see that it's over 7 minutes. I'll give you a classic example. Jay Abraham did a video. It was a long webinar thing, and everybody was dropping out at the same exact point. And so they went and looked at that point where everybody was dropping, and right before that point, he said, "Okay, I'm Jay Abraham, and over the next 2 hours." That's when everybody jumped off. They removed that, and everybody started watching the video. They would continue watching the video until it was too boring, right? So the thing is, if your video is going to be over 7 minutes, don't let them see that it's going to be over 7 minutes. Run it through My Easy Video Player or one of those other interfaces that gives you a control that, that sort of doesn't let them know how long it's going to be. If it is going to be under 7 minutes, you need to, you can go ahead and let that happen. But also, the shorter it is, the more you want to brag about it. So if I say, check out this 15-second video, everybody's like, oh, yeah, okay, it's only 15 seconds. I can check it out. No problem. If I say, check out this 10-minute video, you're all like, well, I'm going to save that till later. Maybe I'll do that in between TV shows tonight. And, click, save, and you just save it. And you never really go back and watch it. So, one of those things is, it's the same thing with eye relief and print copy. What people are doing, you're making it easier for them to make the decision to watch it. Okay, and so you want to pay attention to that. But again, I would use the titles and go, and it's, like I said, follow what everybody else is doing. And when you're going one step beyond, your goal with video production is to make one small improvement each time you make a video. Okay, and then you'll constantly make it, because once a lesson has been burned into your brain, it's burned in. So, like, for example, I wanted to learn how to do mechanics and build websites. So I built one just to learn it. I had, everybody else builds the websites for me, and I just write the copy. So I decided let's start doing this from scratch so I have a more in-depth understanding. And I got the website up to, like 126,000 unique visitors a year. And this is just from, like, organic SEO, right? And I'm not an SEO expert at all. I was just, playing around with it. So I got this, but one of the benefits of that site is it started building a healthy size list, a few thousand people. And I would mail the list, and I remember thinking to myself, well, you know what? I think if I was one of these prospects, I'd like a nice, clear, compelling picture explaining what I'm talking about. And everybody at the time was saying, don't put in pictures. People will think it's, you might have some sort of spam thing in there. They're leery of it, and nobody likes it, so don't put in a picture. Well, I'm a tinker, so I went and did it anyway. Later, I found one guy who actually was advocating putting in pictures. But I did that, and it increased the click-through rate 400%. And the importance of that is by trying it and doing it, I could have quickly found out that doesn't work, learned my lesson, and never put in a picture again. Or conversely, I learned my lesson, I put in that picture, and now I don't send out emails without the pictures, right? So the lesson becomes burned into your brain because you tried it real quick. And it was just one small bit of improvement that I now add to the repertoire. And then the next thing I did was start working on the templates and making sure that they worked really well with mobile formats and stuff like that. But the point that I'm trying to make is this. You want to make one small improvement at a time, and everything that works and does work out for you, you'll end up doing multiple in times. And by the time you've done 50 videos, you're now producing really fantastic videos. And the reason I say only one small thing at a time is you can get lost, trying to perfect a film. There are many films that died on editing room floors because they spent a year shooting, but they spent 3, 4, 5, they keep trying to recut it and, change it, and it's never perfected. In all marketing, motion over meditation is the phrase that pays, okay? Making a move, getting something done, seeing what works, testing things out as sloppily and as quickly as you possibly can, will get you further down the road than saying, okay, I'm studying, James Schramko's videos, or I'm studying this, and I'm not going to produce anything until it's absolutely perfect. Just make one small, tiny change and then launch. And then the next video, you're going to make one small, tiny improvement, and then you're going to launch. And there'll be things like, now I'm going to add those bullets Bon was talking about, or now I'm going to add some little bit of intro music that, that I see some other people doing that looks pretty good. Just one small increment at a time, and then pretty soon your videos contain all of those great elements. And the last piece of advice I'm also going to throw out there is don't forget video is a different medium. A lot of people come from the copywriting world, so they don't understand what makes video so cool, or why they should do it. But the thing is, when you grew up in print the way that I did, you realize the reason we didn't do commercials is they were outrageously expensive. But now online, anybody can afford to put together a commercial for their fans at any point. It's ridiculous. The cost of the barrier to entry isn't limited. But back in the print days, it's like, wow, if I could just demonstrate and show this in a moving video, that would be awesome. If I could, don't forget, video is a much better way to demonstrate and prove things because people truly believe seeing is believing. And, don't forget that a video can do a lot more than just be another format for spitting out your words at a prospect. Demonstrate, show them. The images and stuff like that can spark emotions. And all of this stuff was just super expensive back in the day. And when it opens up, the funny thing is copywriters just turned around and they wrote VSLs, and the only difference between their letter and the VSL was literally some guy reading it on a screen.
Right, right. I mean, it makes me think of one example of, like, if you had to write, a sales letter for the ShamWow, that product that can, mop up everything, like, how would you do that? Whereas on the commercial, all they have that dude who's just like, this is the ShamWow, it cleans shit up, and then he cleans some stuff up, and, like, I think video is so much more effective for demonstration, and like you said, if you could show that to people, they're going to be much more inclined to take action. But that also makes me think, how could you demonstrate an information product? Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, first of all, you can show somebody actually, as long as the packaging and everything is professional and good enough so it's not going to detract from it. You can show somebody starting to receive it. You can show somebody actually working and, doing a little bit of like one person with a clean desk and one laptop, doing the list, things that are on your thing. You can do videos that show, bank statements and other proof elements that you couldn't do, otherwise. And, you can show the business itself and show the benefits of the business themselves. You can show somebody outside, you can show a marketer. Okay, let's suppose you're selling just straight info to marketers. You can show a marketer teaching a brick-and-mortar business, and the brick-and-mortar business seeing and experiencing growth and lots of healthy business. So, for example, let's suppose you're doing a business on, you're teaching marketers how to drive business to restaurants. Okay, so you show a video of your student receiving the material from you, doing a little bit of studying, then you show him a video of him working with a local restaurant, and then you clip later on, show the video with a line of people out the door trying to come in. Showing that is going to mean a lot more than, increase your sales by 12%, because you're showing an image that every restaurant owner wants, right? And then but before that, you're showing an image of a marketer providing a restaurant owner with everything they want, so your final clip is the restaurant owner fawning over and kissing the marketer, saying, "Man, you're awesome, thanks for doing this," another happy customer, and handing them a check, gladly handing them a check, and actually show the restaurant owner handing the restaurateur marketing expert, your customer, a big fat check, and saying at the same time, this was worth twice what I spent. Thank you so much.
Great. That's awesome. I'm going to definitely have to test that out, like you said, and use that in the future, the element of proof in my videos, with like demonstration, that whole unboxing feeling, or, the opening feeling of opening up a new product, stuff like that. Now, I know we went a little over here, Bond, and I'm very appreciative that, you spent your time with us and you shared so much insight on this call. And I'm sure a lot of my users, my peeps, are wondering, where can they check you out? What's the best place to go to connect with you and learn about what you're teaching?
Well, I'm going to give you just 4 simple suggestions. One, like you mentioned at the top, go to the GaryHalbertLetter.com. I have taken it to a new level, but but my skill set comes from that skill set. So the GaryHalbertLetter.com is, it's the most valuable website on the whole internet when it comes to copywriting. So go check it out. It's free anyway. For me personally, to see what I add to the mix, go to my blog at bonhalbert.com. They're very easy to remember. And you can also, there's a third website that my brother and I keep up, which is for anything that's sort of related to what we both do and related to my father. So, if we're breaking down my father's ads or something like that, we do it at a site called halbertizing.com. And we own both the one with the Z and the S, so you can spell it any way you want. But it's halbertizing with a Z.com. And the last thing I am going to mention is recently I published an edited version of the Bond letters. You remember earlier I mentioned that there was a series of letters my dad wrote to me explaining the business when I was young, okay? Well, just recently, what we had done is I'd taken those letters, add comments and updates to the lessons that are in them, and put them on Kindle. So you might want to go and check that out, and that's the Boron letters, B-O-R-O-N. Now, the Boron letters, the letter themselves, are also free on the GaryHalbertLetter.com. That's just if you want a nice, portable, easy to carry around format, and also my updates to that. So, and the other thing is don't think just because it's on Kindle that you can't read them on a computer or your smartphone or anything. There's a little app you can download that allows anybody to read them if that's what's of interest to you. But again, to reiterate, GaryHalbertLetter.com is the best resource, and it's not really oriented or focused on me at all. For me, myself, BonHalbert.com is the best site. To see what we're doing and keeping up with on the market, go to halbertizing.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Bond. I'm going to include links to all of those sites and to your to the Amazon books there. And lastly, I just want to express my gratitude for hopping on the call today, running a little over, and sharing everything that you did, all the value that you gave to myself and all the people listening to this call.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, and feel free to edit if you have to.
Thanks, Bond. Have a good day.
You too.
Thanks a lot for tuning in to the Digital Business Billionaire Show. I want to just remind you one more time, if you want transcripts of the show, the show notes, and all of that delivered to your email inbox, all you have to do is go over to thebbshow.com and you can sign up to get those absolutely free. That's over at thebbshow.com.